This video is about the largest format I've worked with so far. If you are into film photography, you'll probably eventually find your way to medium format or even large format. Same thing happened for me. My first medium format camera was my Pentax 645N, and I had so much fun with it that it ended up to be my most used camera of 2021. So I thought if 645 is this much fun, then 6x7 must be even more fun. But the problem is that the well-known 6x7 cameras like Pentax 6.7, Mamiya 7 and Fuji GW690 are very expensive, and other options like Bronica GS1 or Mamiya RZ67 are very big and heavy. I also had my eye on other formats. In fact, I was seriously considering something like Graflex or even a Polaroid Goose. But in the end, I settled for 6x9 format, and to be more exact, for Fujica GW690. The reason for this choice is mostly the form factor and weight of the camera, that I think it's easy to manage. It's around 1400 grams, which is only a little heavier than my Leica M3 plus TT Artisan 50F095, which is around 1300 grams. So it is very reasonable to carry around. Of course, Fujica looks like a scaled up version of a Leica M camera, and that's why they call this camera the Texas Leica. There are several members in the family of Texas Leicas: GW690, GW692 and GW690 version 3, all with a 90mm f3.5 lens, and then GSW690 family, all with a 65mm f5.6 lens, and finally the G690 family with interchangeable lenses. The camera structure is as simple as it gets. Shutter speed, aperture and focus are all on the lens. There are two shutter buttons and no self timer, and there is a cold shoe, but you get a flash sync socket on the lens. The top of camera is wasted in my opinion, and it has only a selector switch to choose between 120 and 220 film. The lens is a 90mm f3.5, which is equivalent of a 35mm on a full frame. When you think about it, it's really cool that you get a wide field of view with background compression and bokeh of a 90mm lens. You will also get much lower distortion with a 90mm. But the main feature of this camera is its massive resolution. Every frame of this camera is 5.4 times bigger than a 35mm negative. It means that if you scan with the resolution of 3200 ppi, you will get a 74 megapixel image, which is really mind-blowing. These are some sample photos that kind of show how much detail you can capture with this 90mm lens. One other effect of this big negative size is that you get the bokeh of a 90mm lens in a wide angle photo. To show this, I took a series of photos with Fujica and also with my Leica M3 and 35mm Summicron to compare the medium format bokeh with 35mm. Big negative size is definitely a plus when it comes to bokeh and resolution, but it limits the number of photos to only 8 frames on a 120 roll. And considering the price of film these days, it makes every frame very expensive, twice more expensive than something like a Pentax 645N. And of course it doesn't have an interchangeable back, so you really have to finish your roll. One other thing is that for some reason loading the film is not very easy for me, and every time I have to fiddle with the film to put it in the take-up spool, and it makes changing the film in the field very hard for me. Taking the film out of camera is also really awkward, as you have to use the film advance lever several times and it makes a weird noise. It means that when I'm with someone else on a photo walk, I simply have to put the camera aside when I finish my 8 frames. All of these factors makes the use of this camera very limited for me. And of course I don't really need such a high resolution, but at the same time I really can't say goodbye to this camera, so I decided to keep it, but accept the fact that I'm not gonna use it as much as my other cameras. But I'm planning to use this camera for a very special project in future. I'm not sure when, and I'm not gonna spoil it now. So if you want to find out, feel free to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram.